Hello, theater addicts. My name is Celine DeBlanco, and I'm here with Keith Alessi and Erica Conway, and they are doing a production of Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me, but Banjos Saved My Life. And it is going to be playing at Carousel Theater for the 2018 Fringe Festival. So thank you both for coming here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and so for our first question, what is your show about, and what are you guys looking forward to?
Well, this is a one-man show that I wrote earlier this year. It's my first time on stage since high school in 1972. And this is my story. I was a very successful public company CEO who had a lifelong passion for banjos. And I delayed pursuing this passion, like so many people do, because life got in the way and there were always other things to do. And I finally decided to take those banjos out of the closet and learn how to play them, only to receive a deadly cancer diagnosis a week later. So this show it chronicles my early life and how the banjos helped me heal and ultimately took me to a place I hadn't imagined. Now Erica is my producer, and she's an experienced Fringe performer and an actress, and so when I decided this was something I needed to do, I called upon her to operate as my producer and right hand to help me navigate the waters. So we performed the show in Toronto and also the Edmonton Fringe, and we'll be opening here next week.
So this is a personal story that you wrote, and then how did Erica come into the picture to work with you?
Well, I enlisted her help right off the bat, knowing she had done a one-woman show that I had seen in Edmonton. Okay. So I went into CEO mode, and in CEO mode you bring in experts. So she was one of the first people I called on to help navigate the system for me, as well as the structure of the show, because when I first wrote it, it was quite lengthy because I just put everything down on paper, but it was more of a recitation of facts and timeline versus a real story, and over time it evolved into something much different as I stopped talking about what I did and more why I did it and how it felt. And that was really her fingerprints all over it. And she kept reminding me, so, well, you told me what you did, that's not all that interesting, let's talk about why you did it. Fair?
Well, just bringing that into it, right, from an artistic perspective. So it's so cool to have seen the process, because Keith comes from such a linear perspective, and being able to see the story and the fact and being able to pull out actually some of the things that were really beautiful little moments and work on that has just been a really lovely process of unraveling some of the walls of the story, really, and getting a little bit deeper into who he is and what his story really is about. So it's been a really beautiful process of just kind of peeling the onion the whole time, actually. Hey, would you say? And it's been a great process in unraveling the onion. There's been a lot of connections made with people personally.
Just going back to the title of it, you told us about the banjos part, and you were a collector. What about the tomatoes part?
Well,
how did they try to kill you?
Well,
or should we save that for the show?
Well, yes, we should, but interestingly, on the surface, the tomatoes and the banjos are tomatoes and banjos. But metaphorically, I grew up in an immigrant household, an Italian household, and tomatoes represent that household I grew up in. They were a constant, they were present. And the banjos really represent, beyond just the physical banjo and the music, they really represent the way and the method in which I finally ended up connecting with people on a level I never did in my childhood. I came out of a childhood, there was domestic abuse in the household. I had a very depressed mother. We as siblings all had to really fight on our own. I was very much alone, and like many people in that situation, I built very high walls around myself that I couldn't let down. And the banjos ultimately took me to a place where I let down those barriers. So there's a metaphor there on top of the physical objects, but you have to come to the show to find how those tomatoes actually tried to kill me.
All right. So is this your first time in the Fringe? You said that the last time you were on the stage was in high school.
They still talk about that performance in West Side Story, I'll have you know, in hushed tones.
Did you play?
Oh, I was just a member of the gang.
Oh, right.
Yeah, when you're a jet, you're a jet. all
Yeah,
the way.
and you did the snapping.
Yeah, I was one of
Very
those
nice.
guys, yeah.
So I understand you've been doing Fringe festivals across Canada, and now you are in Vancouver. And how many shows do you have?
We have 7, well, we have 8 here. We had 5 in Toronto and 6 in Edmonton. So the first show here will be our 12th show.
So this is your 12th show since you were a jet.
Yes, and
Were
it's,
you a shark?
no, I was a jet, and it's evolved. The show that we'll be doing here is much different than the show we did in Toronto. The shape of it's the same, the story hasn't changed, but the points of emphasis have really, we've gotten a much finer point on things, and as audiences have reacted, and as we're having interactions with audiences afterwards, we're finding certain things that I've been surprised. There are things that are landing I never anticipated. I thought I had this interesting little story about a guy in his Banjos, and it turns out that's not at all what I've got. I've got a show about fighting a good fight. I've got a show about finding life. I've got a show about inspiring people. And I'm just humbled by the reactions I've gotten from audience members, and some of whom I'm connected with and corresponding with, some people who are working through cancer right now, some people who are survivors, people who've lost relatives. At our first show, I had a show in Chicago, Family and Friends. I just wanted to get the idea of what it would feel like to have a microphone and lights and the whole 9 yards. So we had a small performance there. A young woman brought 2 of her friends with her, and these 2 young men came down after the show, and they were tears rolling down their cheeks, and they said, "We didn't know what we were coming to tonight." We lost our dad 2 years ago to brain cancer. He was a banjo player. It gets, and I'm just stunned, of course. And then they said, "Well, your mannerisms are just like his." So in their mind, they had been called to that venue. It was like a message to them. So we all cried, and we had a big hug, and that was just the beginning of it. It's been that way every single show. Somebody, my smallest audience in Toronto, a gentleman came up afterwards, and it was 5 or 6 person audience, and I thought, I thought I did a decent job. You don't get as much feedback from a small audience, and this gentleman came up, and he was about 35, and the CEO of a small tech company. He just collapsed into my arms, and he said, "I'm fighting a fight right now, I don't know if I'm going to make it through." And, we've been, it's been those kinds of things that have been this is just so totally worth it. I've had some of the biggest moments you could have in business. I was a CEO of a company that was the leading gaining stock in the United States, 1997. I was on TV, I was on magazine covers, interviews on the radio, well, the whole 9 yards. I've done big things in my career. This is by far the most meaningful thing I've done. And it's just been unbelievably rewarding.
So do you feel like with each show that you do, that the audience affects your story or your performance of it, I guess? Because you said it changes the more you do it, right? So do you go into a show and do you think about your audience and how your show might affect them before you do it?
Well, I know what I'm going to do, and I know how I'm going to say it. But very early on in a performance, you figure out what an audience is reacting. They're with you. And like last Saturday, our last show in Edmonton was our largest. Every day the audience is built. The first show was about 30. We ended with almost 80. And it was a very energized audience. There were audible gasps at certain points in the script. There was certainly tons of laughter because we take a light approach. And I could tell I had touched some people. You could hear audible reactions to some of the script. And so that just feeds you. It just feeds you in a way that just keeps you going. And it's gratifying on the one hand, but you do get carried along with it because it's not like you're actually processing. You're just kind of going with that energy that's coming to you. At least that's the way it's worked for me.
That's in the moment, but I would say that because of the emotional connections that have happened outside of the show, that the depth and the quality of the depth of the show has gotten stronger. So one of the cool things about watching the process of the show from the beginning to where it is now is that there's just a depth to it that is just getting bigger and stronger, and it seems to be breaking down those barriers and those walls with people a little bit more. And I would say that has to do with the interactions that you have had, right? So you have been interacting with the audience and you are connecting, and therefore some of those things are coming down, and that's really beautiful to see, actually, from the story standpoint.
Maybe that will tie into our next question of what makes your show unique.
I think storytelling as a genre is gaining momentum. I know in a lot of cities that I go to, they have storytelling competitions even in bars and restaurants, and actually national competitions where you work your way up to. This is authentic, real storytelling. This is my story. I'm not telling somebody else's story. I'm not a character. I'm not interpreting it. You're in the moment with the guy who went through it, and he's telling you exactly how it felt, why he did it, and where it took him. So there's no filter there. There's no interpretation. It's just raw. It's my experience, and so I think that makes it a little different from a scripted kind of a situation.
Yeah, it is unique for that reason. It's authentic. It's an authentic personal story, and some of them are. Some of the I think some of the shows are a little bit more like that, or they're based on that sort of a thing. But from my experience in acting, I'm used to coming up, you have a script, you go through the process, this is the character, and even when I have done a personal show where I played a one-woman show, but it was a character. And so I do think this is unique because it's unique in the fact that you have somebody who's coming up and just being brave enough to take all those barriers off and just say, this is who I am, this is my story, this is what it is, for better or worse. And I think that's really brave, actually. I think even as an artist, I feel pangs of resistance to do that myself because it's easy to hide behind the barriers of a character, right?
Yeah.
When somebody gives you a death sentence, which I was essentially given, it's not hard to come out from behind barriers. You really gain quick perspective. You're not worried about what people think of you. It's very easy to be totally honest with folks because you don't have an agenda. And it's, what's the worst thing that can happen? I used to always say in business, okay, who's dying? And who's going to remember 100 years from now? And if the answer is nobody and nobody, then the problem we can deal with it. It's not a big deal. All of a sudden, the first question came up, me. Who's dying? Me. Well, that changed everything, and I think it comes across in my story. But I didn't take it, I wasn't depressed about it. I didn't look at it in a morbid sense. I took it on full on with a positive attitude, with a sense of humor. And this is not a depressing show. Sometimes people hear the word cancer and, I don't want to talk about that. It's not. I make fun of it. It was what it was. It was just something to be overcome. But all that color is in this.
And I think you said earlier, this show is about life. It's not about.
Yeah.
It's not about.
And embracing life. Embracing life, like getting the stuff out of the way so that you can just be in the moment and remember what's actually important right in front of you. And the beautiful thing about the metaphors that Keith is talking about, with the tomatoes and the banjos, we all have that stuff. We all have that stuff that we set aside and we kind of put off and whatever. And it's one of those inevitable things that when you're faced with certain very big things in your life, it all of a sudden becomes very apparent. And it's in your face whether you like it or not, and it's how you choose to deal with it.
I literally had 52 banjos in my closet. One I could have played for every week of the year, but I couldn't play them. I was a collector. People will come to the show, will see I've become competent. I'm certainly not Bella Fleck or Steve Martin or Tony Trischka or some of the real top artists in the field. But I can put on a decent show. That's in 2.5 years. And I didn't pick them up till I was 62 years old. So I look at some of those audience members. I actually had a young audience member come up to me and she said, I've had a guitar in my closet for 5 years. So get it the heck out of there. Can you imagine how good you'll be by the time you're my age if you just go after it? You know, instruments are easy to talk about when you're talking about banjos, but people have these passions that they just bury. And I challenge the audience to look in their closet. I mean, the opening to the show is, they say you can tell who a person is by looking in their closet, you know. And I tell them what was in mine, and at the end of the show I ask them, what's in yours? And why aren't you pursuing those things? And I think it's a message that's timeless, and I think it relates to all generations. One of the volunteers in Edmonton was a gentleman about my age, came up to me afterwards and said, you know, I've been delaying taking guitar lessons. I didn't think I could do it and I'd never get any good, but now that I can see that, you know, you made pretty good progress in 2 years, I can do it, I'm retired. So, you know, it shouldn't take cancer to kick people in the rear end to do things, so that's certainly part of the message we send.
You're reminding me to get my guitar from under my bed. But this makes me really happy because that means that this is a musical, which
Yes.
I have a soft spot for musicals.
Yeah.
So you play banjo in it then?
Well, we start with a bluegrass banjo.
Wow.
We have a banjotar, who most people haven't seen. And we end with a Jason Romero old-time open-back banjo. Jason's from Horsefly, British Columbia. And it's like the top builder in the world of this kind of banjo that I got just recently. And there's a story behind it. I won't tell it now, but there's a heck of a story related to my situation in that banjo. So, yeah, 3 different styles of music, and it's not a concert, but the music's pretty much the soundtrack and takes you through the story and my progression.
Okay. Well, if there's music in it, that's going to make me happy.
Yeah.
And do you sing with your banjo?
One song. I do sing a song, and
All right.
it's the first
I'm
time I've
looking
sung.
forward
It's
to
the first
it.
time I've ever sung solo, I'll have you know, and the first time I've sung on stage since I was a jet.
So it sounds like there's like a lot of vulnerability is being put into the show, and
It's there to
exciting.
tell the story, you know, as opposed to it being this package that we're used to having, like this perfect, like I am a super perfectionist, and so it's, you know, I'm so used to being able to have cross all the T's and dot all the I's and make sure the hair is perfect and do all make sure the lines are good there, and you know, like it's something that's really unique because there's a really lovely thing that happens when there's a level of vulnerability. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy, and it's beautiful when it's a mess sometimes. And not that it's messy, because I'm not saying this show is messy, but it's actually really lovely. It doesn't have to be a 10-year banjo player. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's something really important about being authentic with where you are in the moment. And that's what I think is unique about this story. That's what I really think the message of this story really is be who you are. Right? I think be who you are, be where you're at,
Don't be
and that's
apologetic
beautiful.
about
Don't
it.
be apologetic about it. And there's beauty in the mess, right? And I think we forget that as artists, we forget that as people in general, but especially as artists, because we want to put it in a beautiful package and put it out as a show for people. And I am so honored to be a part of this project because it has reminded me as an artist, it's okay to be messy, it's okay, it's important to be vulnerable, and it's important to just be who you are through whatever it is you're doing. Like, look at kids when they put on shows.
Yeah, this isn't a full theatrical production. This is a guy sitting in a chair with a baseball hat, and a pair of jeans, and a banjo telling a story. It's not it's not Star
It's
Wars.
meaningful.
Yeah.
It's meaningful, right? And so there's an importance that I think sometimes gets forgotten about, and it's a good reminder. Yeah.
I think it's important to know that it's authentic, it's real, it's not depressing. They'll find it inspirational, I think.
It's got lots of funny
We got
parts
some
to it,
funny
yeah.
parts in there. I think it's why you come to the Fringe, to see all kinds of different shows. You know, in Edmonton, I got to see a bunch of shows, and no two of them are anything alike. And I think the beauty of the Fringe, and it was my first experience at the Fringe, I just walked into a theater. Whatever was up next, that's what I was going to see.
Yeah.
And I saw some of the best stuff I ever saw. I saw some stuff I didn't resonate with me, but that was okay. It sure beats sitting at home watching TV, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's just important. It's important to take chances. That's what the Fringe is about, right? It's important for artists to take risks, and it's important for people to take chances to see what's out there, what kind of stories are out there, not just with this show, but with every show.
Well, and I'm acutely aware I don't fit the demographic graphic of the average fringe performer, so come see an old guy.
Well, it sounds great, it sounds inspiring, and I'm looking forward to seeing it now.
Cool.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks, can't wait to see you out there.
Yeah.
I'm Celine DeBlanco, this is Keith Alessi and Erica Conway, and they are with Tomatoes Tried to Kill Me, but Banjos Saved My Life, which will be playing at the Carousel Theatre. And on the first Thursday of the Fringe, the show will be half price. So if you want to find out how the tomatoes tried to kill him, come see the show.